and welcome to our next video in the Medicine in Britain series. This time we are looking at prevention and treatment in the medieval period. To be clear, let's get two things straight. Prevention is the steps taken by individuals to stop themselves getting sick in the first place, and treatment is what happens when a person is already sick to try and make them better. These are key to understanding and will help in any exam if you don't confuse them. Let's start with the treatments. Just like in the cause of disease, treatments can be split into the supernatural and the rational. The supernatural ones start with the church. As the church said that disease could be caused by God, then the treatments could be sorted by the church. The sick could use prayers and lighting candles to pray to God for forgiveness and for them to be well again. They could also pay the church priests to say special masses for them. The sick could also undertake a fast whereby they didn't eat to show how pious they were. There were more treatments, which included making offerings at the shrines of saints after a pilgrimage. A pilgrimage was a journey taken to a holy site such as a shrine. For example, in England, many Catholics took a pilgrimage to Canterbury to the shrine of Thomas Becket. Linked to the idea of the church, one medieval treatment was the king's touch. This was the belief that as God had chosen the king, by divine right, he could heal some illnesses. Edward I was a particular fan of touching the sick. In the image you can see Mary I using this method, showing it continued into the early Renaissance. However, if these church-approved treatments did not work, the priest would sometimes say that treating the disease was against God's will, and that the patient should let the disease run its course. And if they tried medicine, then this would not cleanse their soul, and they could still face hell. Despite this though, there were alternatives available to the sick. Some took to wearing charms or amulets to help treat their disease. Some physicians would also prescribe treatment according to the location of the planets, so that it was done at a particular time. So that's the supernatural. Let's now dive into the rational. Medieval medicine did not work on the same assumption that we have today. Today we treat the cause of the illness, whereas in the medieval period it was about treating the symptoms, as this was often the visual part of the illness. Makes a lot of sense. One of the big theories about treatment came from a physician in ancient Rome, Claudius Galen. Galen took the ideas of Hippocrates about the theory of the four humours and developed this to include the theory of opposites. Under this theory, he said that treating the imbalance with the opposite would cure the imbalance. For example, if you had too much phlegm, which is cold and wet, you should use something hot and dry like chili to cure the imbalance. This idea of the theory of the opposites created more and more treatments designed to balance the humours. This included things like bleeding, purging, bathing, and remedies. Let's look at these in a bit of detail. Bleeding. This was used to balance the humours, and it was believed it would help the body get rid of the bad humour. It was carried out by the barber surgeon. There were several methods, including cutting a vein to allow blood to seep out, using leeches which would feed on the blood and then drop off, and cupping, in which a hot cup is added over the cut in the skin to create a vacuum and draw out the blood. Sometimes patients were bled too much though, and they died. Purging was another method. This involved giving a patient an emetic to make them vomit, or a laxative to clear the bowels. Bathing was another common method, as it was hoped that the hot water would draw out the blockages or bad humours. Sometimes herbs were added to the water to help with the remedy. Lastly were remedies. Remedies were also available and often made of herbs of plants. There were remedies such as aloe vera to help with digestion, or a popular remedy known as a theriaca. This was a mixture of spices and were popularised by Galen, who had written about them. So that's treatment. Lots on offer for the sick, but many unlikely to actually help. We know what to do if you get sick, but what if you wanted to prevent getting sick? In a similar fashion to treatment, there were religious methods which included regular confession and prayer to ensure sins were quickly forgiven. A little money to the church wouldn't hurt either, to make sure that soul was squeaky clean. Another method was to keep the air pure. This linked to the theory of miasma, which said bad smells caused illness. Keeping the air pure with herbs and spices would stop this. Some people wore pomandas, which were capsules with the herbs which were worn around the neck or waist. Lastly was the leading of a healthy life, of moderation and avoiding excess. There was a set of advice which physicians followed called the regimen sanitatis. This was a set of rules, covered things like getting enough sleep, avoiding quarrelling with your neighbours, not eating too much and bathing to keep clean. So in summary, prevention and treatment were around in abundance in the period and often linked to the causes of disease. The Church offered many treatments including prayer and pilgrimage. Others tried astrology and amulets to heal themselves, whilst physicians looked at the theory of opposites to balance those humours with bloodletting, purging and bathing. And with that, my loyal compatriots, that was a little bit of history.